This shit needs to be talked about until it is common knowledge. As the middle class rapidly shrinks and we devolve into two classes, the swindlers and the swindled, a societal mind shift becomes mandatory. You see, well over 50% of the U.S. population now spends well over 50% of their income on shelter. Surprise, surprise, we also now have the lowest home ownership in over half a century, as well as a sad sea of tent cities popping up all over the place. Sensibly, many of those who have had their quality of life forcefully depressed have opted to defy rather than comply. Zebidiah Funkbutter is one of them. Zeb speaks. By the age of 18, the American dream was already a thing of the past. After spending my 18th birthday on the road, this semi-wet behind the ears kid learned a couple of things. I now knew I liked beer, and I learned where to hide money from a carny underneath a bar of soap. These human oddities shaved once a week and drank twice a day, with in-between time spent hustling marks and shooting speedballs. Working a mere 3 days a week allowed for coastal culture immersion, where I met a surf rat named Casey Dia. Casey couch surfed at my beach pad free of charge. It was a fair price. We'd all surf, drink beer, and if a chick was at the pad, our code to not enter was the sound of the Boz Scaggs' Silk Degrees album. Casey ended up being the only one to play the Lido Shuffle. As time passed by, I became more aware of how being well-informed, fashionable, and forward-thinking enriched Casey's life. I evolved dramatically during his 6-month couch surfing stint, going from a boyish semi-val into an innovative, in-the-know, alluringly cool man. We called them Vals because they lived in the inland valleys as opposed to the coast. Having a low threshold for boredom, Zebidiah much preferred his coastal peers because they were the opposite. They were hip, cutting edge. They could also be crude. Zeb remembers hanging out with the gang at his beach town's hippie juice bar called Miles from Nowhere. The owner, whose first name was Miles, and who was only 19 himself, was hitting on an obviously underage gal roller skating up to the juice bar. Zeb chided him to back down, yet Miles loudly snapped, "Old enough to skate, old enough to mate." The 15-ish-year-old gal spitefully retorted, "Yeah, you wish you were hetero." Injun Joe say, "Zeb have bats in his belfry. We take break now." Thanks a bunch, gang. I, the fictional Zebidiah Funkbutter, am extraordinarily appreciative of all of you fine folks. Enjoy the show! Moving 6 blocks south, I found an oceanfront complex with a large house in front with 7 studio units directly behind it. The landlord was this queer, eccentric older man named Nick Rophelia, who owned a slew of small-town radio stations. This stroke of luck had Zeb's best friend and roommate, Timmy Dial, calling one of Nick's radio stations to report a lost wallet he had found. Unhinged Timmy collects wallets. Claiming it had $770 cash in it, plus a $100 Target gift card, and belonged to someone named Justin, the radio host said, "Ooh, how nice of you. Do you want me to ask over the airwaves for Justin to claim it?" Timmy said, "No, I want to request a sad song for Justin." Although I did see him saunter around in assless chaps a few times, Nick was never inappropriate with me nor Timmy Dial. Yikes. I finally got to play Boz Skaggs, as this gal named Norma Stitz picked me up. Injun Joe say, bolt-ons. While I was fake liking Norma, Timmy was faking getting hit by cars. He would grift Arizona tourists by purposely riding his bicycle in front of them as they were pulling out of driveways. Injun Joe say, anyone want more Norma? He would loudly slam his hand against their car in order to make the almost collision appear to be a severe collision. Timmy knew that the vacationers did not want any strife, easily acquiring $50 to $100 per grift. He moved one block south to another oceanfront complex. He snagged this pad by befriending the landlord, doing some volunteer work for him, which led to Zeb becoming the manager of this 8-plex of 2-bedroom units, translating to his share only being $198. Working bell to bell, 9 a.m. to midnight at the county fair were grueling 15-hour shifts. With no days off for 14 straight days, this carny gig was brutal. However, the $1,680 allowed Zeb to not need to work the final 2 months of summer, allowing for things that were meaningful to him. Partying, deep thinking, chicks, and surfing. You know, things that make you happy. Except for the carnival gig, working 2 or 3 days a week, yet living right on the oceanfront is good living. And wow, falling asleep to the sound of crashing waves while looking at the shimmering surf was a total panty dropper. Injun Joe say, attaboy, Zeb. Preferring to rent to college students, Zeb made an exception for a couple of hip cousins from New York City. Having grown weary of the bourgeois, uninspiring, and soul-crushing bands such as Journey, Styx, Kansas, Foreigner, Supertramp, and REO Speedwagon, Zebidiah was ecstatic when the cousins Neil and Haywood Jablomi clued him in. Due to the Jablomi's CBGB acquired experience, Zeb began grooving on the Tough Darts, Television, Blondie, Patti Smith Group, Talking Heads, The Clash, Roxy Music, The Dead Boys, Elvis Costello, and, of course, the Ramones. This was a refreshing switch from the sterile, overproduced, boilerplate bands with big hair to exciting, spirited bands with uncompromising rage and individuality. Oh, and you think the Vals were giving their chicks this instead of a St. Christopher medallion?
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Zebidiah Funkbutter is also well versed in navigating life's pitfalls. Take a look!
It sound right, boys.
And don't forget the second most